On October 3, 2009, during the war in Afghanistan, the Battle of Kamdesh, also known as the Battle of Combat Outpost, Keating, was a significant engagement that took place. Keating was situated in a deep valley surrounded by steep mountains, making it highly vulnerable to attacks. The outpost was intended to be a base for counter-insurgency operations and to connect with the local population, but its location made it difficult to defend. Despite the challenges in both defending and attacking, U.S. soldiers managed to kill 150 Taliban fighters, accounting for half of the Taliban forces involved in the battle. But how did it all start? To understand the Battle of Kamdesh, let me take you back to 2006. Back in 2006, Allied commanders saw Kamdesh as key for stopping anti-coalition forces from using supply routes to and from Pakistan. They built Provincial Reconstruction Team (PRT) bases to extend government control and demonstrate strength, especially in remote areas like Nuristan. Colonel John W. Nicholson Jr., leading the 3rd Infantry Brigade Combat Team, noted Kamdesh's strategic location where 3 valleys from Pakistan converged. He believed this could block many weapons and troops from entering. The local leader, Gul Muhammad Khan, and the strategic location influenced placing the Nuristan PRT there, strongly recommended by Nuristan's governor, Tamim Nuristani. On July 20, 2006, Cherokee Company and a platoon from Able Troop 3, 71 Cavalry Squadron arrived at landing zone Warhite near Kamdesh to set up the camp. Built by the 3, 71 Cavalry, and manned by Able Troop until June 2007, the camp was initially meant to be a PRT outpost, but remained a fire base due to heavy fighting. In December 2006, it was renamed Camp Keating after Benjamin Keating, an executive officer who died in a vehicle accident during a combat mission. The 3, 71 Cavalry carried out successful combat missions around the camp and repelled several attacks. Kamdesh and much of Nuristan are in the rugged Hindu Kush Mountains with steep slopes and fast-moving rivers. The area's extreme weather and terrain made travel and daily life difficult, affecting American military operations from the start. On May 5, 2006, Operation Deep Strike began, moving forces from the Kauke and Korangal valleys to Kamdesh. The pickup zone, PZ Reds, was on a steep 8,000-foot slope called Heart Attack Ridge. A Chinook helicopter crashed there at night, killing everyone on board. The remaining platoon members worked to recover their comrades' bodies and destroy sensitive equipment. Captain Michael and Cherokee Company's 2nd Platoon found a large boulder blocking helicopter landings at the proposed PRT site, so they placed the landing zone on a rocky peninsula across the Lande Sin River near Ermel. The surrounding mountains made the site hard to defend. On August 8, 2006, 19 days after the first American landing, the PRT was attacked. Captain Frank Brooks found the PRT hard to reach from LZ Warhite due to the valley's complex terrain. Aircraft eventually scattered the attackers. From August 8 to November 25, 2006, intense efforts to supply and expand the PRT faced constant ambushes on the narrow mountain road from Nare Phobi. First Lieutenant Ben Keating drove a supply vehicle himself to avoid risking his men's lives, but died when the road collapsed under his truck. His death deeply affected the 3, 71 Cav, and the Allies stopped using the Kamdesh-Nare road. Supplying Camp Keating, renamed on November 26, 2006, became very difficult due to bad conditions for air supply and little local support. By December 2008, plans were made to close Camp Keating as it was too isolated and hard to defend. Nuristan, where Kamdesh is located, is ethnically distinct from the rest of Afghanistan and divided into 4 major groups: the Qom, Kata, Kushtos, and Kalasha. These groups speak 5 languages and various dialects, making translators from other areas useless. The Soviets had faced a group called the Daulet in eastern Nuristan, who followed a strict form of Islam and were hostile to rivals. The Nuristanis resisted Islam until 1895 and were known for fiercely defending their beliefs. In 2006, resistance in Nuristan was led by Hezb-e-Islami Gulbuddin (HIG), a skilled and well-supported group that had resisted the Afghan government. When Captain Aaron Swain of Cherokee Company discussed setting up near Kamdesh with Afghan Border Police Commander Ahmed Shah, he was warned that Haji insurgents had tried to blow up Shah's jeep on his last visit and that it was a dangerous place. American troops in Nuristan found themselves directly opposing HIG forces. Colonel Pat Donahue, a former commander, believed the Nuristani population was neutral and hostile to any outside groups, making it unlikely that resources spent there would be effective. Resources were limited because only 5,000 American troops were available to cover an area the size of Virginia with little infrastructure. A new counter-insurgency strategy, refined by General David Petraeus and detailed in the Army and Marine Counter-Insurgency Field Manual FM 3/24, aimed to win over the population of Nuristan. Unlike Donahue, Colonel Nicholson supported this strategy and saw Kamdesh as a key control point. The PRT's approach to victory had 3 steps. First, to separate the enemy from the people. Second, connect the people to their government. And third, transform Afghanistan through economic development and building infrastructure. Nicholson hoped the PRT would spark a process developed by the Nuristanis themselves. Lieutenant Keating, the first commander of the Kamdesh PRT, was determined to make the strategy work. However, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Howard, the squadron commander, saw the strategy as providing 3 main services: clean water through gravity-fed pipelines, repairing hydroelectric plants in Urmel and Kamdesh, and building new plants in Murdesh and Gawardesh. New roads would be built and maintained by local contractors to improve the local economy and communication with the central government. A budget of $1.33 million was allocated for these projects. However, the results were mixed. Some villagers and clans who were excluded from these projects became resentful. For example, Haji Yunus, a village elder and contractor, was kidnapped and murdered. A note on his body warned against working with coalition forces, signed by Mullah Omar. Though Omar was a top Taliban leader, U.S. intelligence believed Hig was responsible, using Omar's name to instill fear. Frequent ambushes and firefights along the road to Nurey increased Keating's doubts about the strategy. After Keating's death, a night letter appeared on the Upper Kamdesh Mosque on April 29, 2007, threatening those working with the Americans. The next day, insurgents kidnapped and murdered Fazl Ahad, an elder trying to resolve local disputes. In response, more government troops were sent but were ambushed on the Nurey-Kamdesh road and heavily attacked. This ambush showed that the attackers were more organized and professional than before, using coordinated fire from both sides of the valley. The Americans called these attackers anti-Afghan fighters, AAF, who disguised themselves in Afghan army uniforms, set up fake checkpoints, and financed their operations through taxes and tolls from local contractors. AAF included warriors from outside Nuristan, bringing in arms from Pakistan. In late May 2007, Bulldog Troop 1, 91 Cavalry Squadron arrived at Kop Keating under Captain Tom Bostic. They began Operation Mountain 2 to extend observation posts and control the villages between Kop Keating and Sarat Kohe. This was meant to counter AAF expansion, but the AAF responded with a well-organized ambush on July 26, 2007. The attackers, dressed in Afghan army uniforms and equipped with modern weapons, launched a sustained attack. Despite American air and artillery support, the battle resulted in significant American casualties, including the deaths of Captain Bostic and Staff Sergeant William Ryans Fritcha, and injuries to several others. The Battle of Sarat Kohe confirmed the threats in the night letter and posed a crisis for Lieutenant Colonel Chris Kalenda. The AAF, supported by the Taliban in Pakistan, were expanding their operations. American forces were spread too thinly to withstand sustained combat, highlighting the need to win Nuristan's support. First Lieutenant Dave Roller took a new approach by attending meetings with village leaders in casual clothes, discussing common values rather than appearing as a heavily armed soldier. This impressed local elder Maulawi Abdul Rahman, who began rallying village support for the Afghan government. Captain Joey Hutto, Kop Keating's new commander, expanded this initiative, drawing on his experience with coin campaigns in Central America. By October 2007, local leaders in Kamdesh, inspired by Rahman, held a large meeting called Ashura to discuss the future of Nuristan. Over 800 representatives attended this 2-day event, aiming to bring order and economic growth to the region. They elected a 100-member council, known as the 100-Man Shura, to create a security plan and negotiate with the American military and the Afghan government. This agreement, called the Commitment of Mutual Support, promised local security in exchange for stopping uninvited American searches in towns and mosques. From November to January 2008, Shura members visited villages, informing people that the time for holy war was over and that local government would bring peace and prosperity. This agreement significantly reduced fighting in the area, and ANA and American deaths dropped from 30 to 3 in the following year. However, by October 2008, the Shura began to weaken. The original ISAF forces, 1 to 91 Cavalry, had left and were replaced by the 6th Squadron, 4th Cavalry Regiment. On October 28th, Captain Robert J. Ilescas, the commander of COP Keating, was severely injured by a remotely detonated IED and later died on December 1st. The assassin, found in Urmel, was aided by one of the Afghan workers at Camp Keating and supported by Urmel's elders. Ilescas's death hurt the Shura's influence in cooperation with ISAF forces. By summer 2009, COP Keating became more isolated, with ground resupply nearly impossible due to limited roads and frequent insurgent attacks. The camp's location made it vulnerable to enemy fire, and supply flights were limited to moonless nights for safety. The nearest attack helicopters were a 30-minute flight away in Jalalabad. OP Fritcha was set up to support COP Keating and was manned by a mix of U.S. and Afghan forces. The soldiers at both outposts were preparing to evacuate and had informed local Afghan leaders of their plan. Bravo Troop, 3rd Squadron destroyers, 61st Cavalry Regiment manned COP Keating, while Afghan forces managed checkpoints and roadblocks around the area, supervised by Latvian operational mentor liaison teams. The coalition planned to close COP Keating by August 2009, but this was delayed due to other military operations nearby. Because of the planned closure, coalition leaders decided not to improve the base's fortifications. Before the battle, they received 3 intelligence reports about a possible insurgent attack, but these were dismissed as they weren't confirmed by other sources. The Battle of Kamdesh began around 3:00 a.m. on October 3rd. More than 350 Taliban-backed insurgents instructed all Kamdesh villagers to evacuate. By 6:00 a.m., they launched an intense attack on the outpost from all directions using mortars and rocket-propelled grenades, disabling the American mortar pit almost instantly. The assault resulted in the first American casualty within 2 minutes and also targeted observation post Fritcha, limiting available support. Coalition forces responded with small arms fire, mortars, and later with helicopters, heavy artillery, and airstrikes. The attackers breached Keating's defenses about 48 minutes into the battle, exploiting weaknesses near the latrine area, the main entrance guarded by civilian Afghan security personnel, and the eastern side manned by Afghan National Army soldiers. Despite efforts by 2 Latvian military advisors, First Sergeant Janis Lakas and Corporal Martins Dabalins, to encourage the Afghan forces to hold their ground, they quickly retreated. U.S. soldiers observed that none of the Afghan soldiers stood firm. Additionally, some Afghan soldiers were reported to have looted items, including digital cameras and protein drinks, from American soldiers during and after the battle. After infiltrating, the attackers ignited a fire that engulfed most of the barracks within the first hour. American and Latvian defenders regrouped around 2 buildings that remained unburned, establishing a tight internal perimeter. From there, they launched counterattacks to reclaim much of the outpost, eventually expanding their defense line back to the entry control point and the buildings on the outpost's western edge, which became their final stronghold. With the assistance of Sergeant Armando Avalos, Sergeant Jason Suter, and First Lieutenant Cuss and Schroed, U.S. air support, including attack helicopters, A-10s, a B-1 bomber, and F-15 fighters, targeted the local mosque, a source of heavy insurgent fire. Once soldiers at Opia Fritcha regained control of their mortar pit, Sergeant Avalos coordinated indirect support to bolster COP Keating's defense. 2 USAF F-15E fighter bombers, led by Captains Mike Polidor and Aaron Dove, along with their wingmen, First Lieutenant Justin Pavoni and Captain Ryan Bone, circled overhead for nearly 8 hours, coordinating airstrikes by 19 other aircraft. Later in the day, the enemy fighters started to move away. The Quick Reaction Forces, QRF, from the 1st Battalion, 32nd Infantry Regiment, didn't reach the outpost until 7 p.m., while some of the enemy were still there as late as 5:10 p.m. It took a long time for help to arrive at COP Keating because there weren't enough planes available, and the land was difficult to move through. Soldiers from the 10th Mountain Division's 1, 32 Infantry Regiment were flown to the nearest helicopter landing zone on OP Fritcha and got there around 2 p.m. After helping to secure OP Fritcha, the Quick Reaction Force members walked down from the mountain's peak to COP Keating. On the way, they ran into an ambush on the side of the mountain and killed 3 enemy fighters around 6 p.m. After that, they kept going down and reached the outpost around 7 p.m. Once there, they cleared the parts of the outpost that hadn't been taken back by the other troops yet, Right after they got in, they found and confirmed that Sergeant Joshua Hart, who had been missing, had died. More attacks by Taliban forces were stopped by U.S. aircraft. In the end, 8 U.S. soldiers were killed and 27 were wounded. 8 Afghan soldiers and 2 Afghan private security guards were also wounded. The U.S. military estimated that around 150 to 200 Taliban insurgents were killed in the fight. After the battle, the U.S. Central Command investigated what happened, led by U.S. Army General Guy Swan. The report, made public in June 2011, stated that the chain of command didn't take enough steps to prevent the attack. However, it praised the soldiers who fought at the base for their bravery and courage. 4 U.S. Army officers, Captain Melvin Porter, Captain Stoney Portis, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Brown, and Colonel Randy George, who were in charge of Outpost Keating, were criticized for their leadership failures. However, the U.S. Army did not reveal the names of these officers in the public report. Moreover, 27 soldiers received the Purple Heart for injuries sustained in combat. Additionally, 37 soldiers were honored with the Army Commendation Medal, adorned with the V device for valor. 3 soldiers earned the Bronze Star Medal, while another 18 received the Bronze Star Medal with the V device for valor. 9 soldiers were decorated with the Silver Star for their valorous actions. Staff Sergeant Justin Gallegos' Silver Star was later upgraded to a Distinguished Service Cross, and First Lieutenant Andrew Bunderman received the same honor. The flight crews of 3 U.S. Army AH-64D Apache helicopters were recognized for their bravery during the battle. Captain Matthew Kaplan, CW-3 Ross Llewellyn, CW-3 Randy Huff, CW-2 Gary Wingert, CW-2 Chad Bardwell, and CW-2 Chris Wright were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for their close combat attacks against the Taliban. Captain Michael Polidor and Captain Aaron Dove, the pilot and weapons systems officer of an F-15E aircraft coordinating close air support, was also presented with the Distinguished Flying Cross. However, on February 11, 2013, President Barack Obama awarded the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Clinton Romesha, a battle survivor, whose courageous actions during the battle made him the 4th surviving soldier from the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts to receive this prestigious honor. And on August 26, 2013, Staff Sergeant Ty Carter also honored with the Medal of Honor for his bravery during the same battle. So this is it, my folks. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video. Let us know what your thoughts are about this absolutely insane story in the comments. If you love war stories like these, make sure to subscribe to our channel and leave this video a like if you enjoyed it. Till then, take care of yourself. See you in our next video.